Hi, everyone. My name is Joel Dennis. I am a coach at American Heritage School in Broward in sunny South Florida. I am also the director of interpretation at Summit Debate over the summers, and I am here to talk to you about my top 5 tips and tricks with regards to program oral interpretation. Let's dive in, shall we? So first, vary the voices in your literature selection process. This will make your performance varied, it will make it dynamic, and it will make it stand out. How do we do that? Well, we need to vary the genres. Obviously, it's in the rules for program oral interpretation to make sure you have 2 of the 3 genres of prose, poetry, and drama. But there's so many more other genres of literature and of things that we could use, like podcasts and articles and debates and interviews. There's just a whole plethora of different genres, even subgenres within prose. Think children's literature, young adult literature, different genres in drama. Think humor, think drama, right? Just vary as much as you can the genres that you choose. Secondly, let's vary the points of view that we have. Okay, I think the best way to explain the points of view variation would be through an example. Say you wanted to put together a program about hashtag Stop Asian Hate. Okay, it would be a very difficult program and very difficult to get all of the different sides of the argument if all that you had in the program were just different victims of hate, right? We probably want different angles of that argument and of why we should stop Asian hate, right? Maybe we want a lawyer. Maybe we want an antagonist type character to figure out why someone would want to do this in the first place, to figure out the causes and the roots of this awful issue. Maybe we want to have the parents of someone, or the son or daughter, or the grandson or granddaughter of someone who was a victim. There are so many different points of view that we should think about and try to think about, make a list of all the different points of view that you might want to find in looking for the literature. Finally, let's think about show versus tell literature. So when I say show me versus tell me, what I'm saying is show me would be like a first person account of an example of the argument that you were trying to display. So if we are going along with this example of hashtag Stop Asian Hate, if you just showed a bunch of different victims or showed people within the moment of it, right, we might not get the scope, and we might not understand the full argumentation of it. We might not understand the root causes of the problem or the full impacts of the problem, the numbers, right, the quantitative numbers. Conversely, if you have all tell me, right, which would be article type pieces of literature that just tell you about the problem and tell you about the numbers, right, then we might not get the human aspect. So you really need to find the right balance between show me versus tell me. And I think the best example I can show you of someone who did all of these things is the 2020 national champion at NSDA of program oral interpretation, Rashawn Leday from Comeau High School. Let's take a look.
Black boys. I want to make a movie called Dinosaurs in the Hood, yo. like Jurassic Park meets Friday meets, I don't know, The Pursuit of Happiness. And there has to be a scene where the little black boy sits on the bus and plays with his toy T-Rex. I mean, there has to be a T-Rex. It's a dinosaur movie. You see, this movie is about a black boy is walking through his poor neighborhood. Q, Jim Crow. Q, education inequality. Q, mass incarceration. Black boy walks into America. There's a huge problem that has been brewing for a while now, and it's time to cut the shit. Well, you see, the national crisis of black pain, and well, the bodies that felt it before dying, well, they shouldn't be the bait of low-grade internet outlets that never gave a damn about race relations in America in the first place. That is until they clickbaited them. Get a load of this. Fox News watches as black boy bleeds out while still being buckled in his seatbelt. 72 likes. I mean, who the hell is liking this voyeuristic, capitalistic black bloodlust is plaguing our country? Blood spilled in the name of white supremacy are testaments to an insatiable thirst. America has no problem profiting and mocking black pain. Q, non-black artists telling black stories. Q, deaf white ears. Q, consumer-driven oppression. Q, America.
Wow, 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 wow. Rashawn is amazing. Okay, let's digest what we just saw. We saw about 5 pages there. The very first one, we saw a first-person account from a little boy, kind of like a prose type character. Then we saw a third-person critical account that could have been some sort of article, could have been a different prose, it could have been a poetry. It's hard to tell because he made so many different choices with regards to the blocking. Third, we definitely heard an article type voice that was more observational and diagnosed the issue. And then fourth, we saw an amazing slam poem where he was able to pull together all these amazing, amazing poetic moves, these imagery-filled moves. So clearly, when you vary the genres, when you vary the points of view, when you have varied voices, what happens is you create a full dynamic performance. Let's move on to my second tip. The introduction. Make it memorable, right? The introduction, a lot of people look over in interp events, and that is impossible to do in POI when we are constructing an argument. So the introduction is so, so important because it puts together, gives us context for your argument, for all of the literature that you just put together. So how do we make an introduction memorable? Well, first, it starts with a detailed argument. Okay, go back to debate class. If you never had a debate class, find the debaters on your team and ask them how to provide a full argument, right? We need background information. We need a claim. We need a warrant. We need data. We need impact. We need a possible solution, okay? Give us all of that, condense it, and give it to us very, very succinctly. Tell us exactly what your argument is, but make it a detailed argument, okay? Secondly, and this is something that a lot of people do, is they sort of like speed through the titles and authors because they think, oh, maybe that's like the most boring part of a piece. But really, we need to give it some time. And with so many pieces put together, sometimes 10 pieces of literature, we want to give it time. We want to make it part of the performance, right? So don't just speed through them. Make it part of the performance. And often, it's a really good idea to leave the last title for the best title that you have, or the most important title or impactful title, because even titles of literature can be impactful, or authors of literature can be very impactful. And then finally, there's always like a because statement at the end of an introduction, and in POI, it proves to be very, very powerful. So try to offer a solution in that moment, or give us some sort of hope. I think someone who gave us an extremely powerful argument, and one that I will never forget, was Liza Roddy in the 2019 NSDA final round from Apple Valley. So let's take a look at her introduction.
Upon completing my sexual education course requirement for graduation, I realized that my class never covered one key concept: consent. And I learned that I'm not alone in my experience, because according to CNN of September 29, 2018, only 8 high schools in the US are required to even mention consent in their sexual education programs. This is extremely concerning, because Advocates for Youth of 2018 reports that 46% of high schoolers are sexually active. If we are going to teach safe sex in high schools, we need to talk about consent. So, through the prose, The Claiming of Sleeping Beauty by Anne Rice, Speak by Laurie Anderson, The Sleeping Beauty in the Woods by Charles Perrault, and The Best of Disney by Hal Leonard, and using scenes from the dramas Mean Girls, Never Been Kissed, and The Girl Next Door, The Poetries in America by Kara Rudinsky, and Paper Dolls by Sierra DeMulder, and the Huffington Post's article alongside BuzzFeed.com's article by Summer Burton titled 30 Healthy Ways to Teach Kids About Consent. In the wake of the Me Too movement and the Ford-Kavanaugh hearing, it is clear that sexual violence remains a systemic and prevalent issue in our country today. Without comprehensive consent education, we cannot expect change. Consent 101, a program.
I mean, she did all that, and that's why Liza is an empress, and nobody should ever forget that. So let's move on. Number 3, block like a beast. Okay, how do we do that? What is blocking? Well, blocking is movement. Blocking is everything in a POI. And how do we block like these kings and queens that make it to these final rounds, right? How do we block to make sure that our arguments are and our performances are as amazing as they can be? Well, there's a few things to consider. First, create a roller coaster with your performance. One thing that I like to tell my students is that it's really, really easy to fall asleep in a car ride when you're going down a straight road and you're going 70 miles an hour, right? Really easy to fall asleep, whether you're driving the wheel or whether you're in the back seat, right? But a roller coaster, a little more difficult to fall asleep in, right? How do we create a roller coaster though? Well, we have so many different pages, right? With one page to another, one page can have a lot of tension, a lot of movement, a lot of bigness. And then the next character, the next page can be a little quieter, a little slower, a little stiller, with a little less tension, okay? And then we get big again. And then we slow it down a little bit, right? Find these nuances, find ways to go up the hill and down the hill and loop-de-loop and around the corner, okay? Secondly, you want to display the genres, right? Each literature can give us different movements and can lend themselves to different movements. Poetry has a lot of rhetorical tools. Poets use a lot of rhetorical tools that may not be used by a prose writer or someone who's writing an article, right? Show us that imagery. Display the metaphor. Really hit that alliteration. Elongate vowels to give us big movement, okay? Anything that you can do with poetry to display that it's poetry is a really, really good idea. If you're doing drama, right? Show us the dialogue. Show us environment when you are giving us a prose, okay? Next, consider the character. So obviously we want distinct characters between each piece of literature. So when we move as a character, we should consider what that character would or would not do in any given situation or in any given environment that you might give them. And finally, and this is really, really important, just continue to make choices. We start the year off with a few choices because we're just trying to memorize it. We're trying to get it on its feet. But then as the year goes on, make more and more and more choices. That's what you should be doing in between each tournament. By the end of the year, there should be an idea or a choice attached with almost every single phrase of your entire piece. That doesn't mean you should be moving the whole time, but it should mean that there is a specific choice that you made. It's really easy to tell when someone's just saying lines and there's not really any choices made with those lines. So the more choices, the better. And I think someone who knew this, someone who made so many really unique, fantastic choices and was amazing to watch, was a finalist from the 2017 NSDA National Final Round, Emma Warnicki from St. Mary's Hall. So let's take a look at what Emma did.
We are taught from the moment we leave our pink nurseries that we are collapsible paper dolls. We are taught, don't stand too tall, don't act too strong. You can only laugh cutely, hee-hee, or cry beautifully. They say 1 in 3 women will be raped or sexually abused in their lifetime. I am one of 3 daughters. In nearly 15 years of living in New York City, I've lost count of the number of times I've stood on a packed subway and had some stranger cup my butt or whisper something into my ear. In college, I felt a man as he pressed up against the back of my thigh in between stations. Hey, can we talk? I kept reading my book. Only he kept grinning at me. Can we talk? Often invisible, these physical and verbal attacks limit the freedom of women because they are often obligated to alter their daily lives, changing routes, modes of transportation, schedules, and clothing. The result is to exclude women from the public arena. I felt very uncomfortable. I jumped up and walked quickly upstairs. I turned the corner and went downstairs to catch another line to a different train when the man suddenly turned up next to me. You take this train too? What direction? We can meet sometime.
Sorry, I need a moment because I feel like the ghost of Emma Warnicki just like came and possessed me because that was freaking powerful. Like, oh my God. Emma made so many choices for every single moment. Like from the moment she began, before she opened the book, she just said, and then she came up. And then there was filled with tension, right? That poem, the collapsible paper doll poem is just tension filled, turn the page. And then boom, she's this like cool cat bartender from New York just doing her job. And all of a sudden we see her in this like beautiful hotel bar situation. And she's just telling us this beautiful prosaic story. And then all of a sudden we're like on a train and it was very clear. And she could see the like awful predator like across from her. And then the way that she took Tracians into the stop of like of a train station, like, and then the article voice toward the end where she's clearly saying an article, but she's a woman in that moment. So take like learn from that, because a lot of times when we do articles, we'll do the and now we have, and then, and now we have. No, she like literally was in the moment, but third person in like is brilliant, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, let's move on because I will have a conniption fit otherwise. So fourth, the climax, okay? Blow us away with the climax. The climax is so, so important, and POIs or performances in general without a climax just feels so anticlimactic. So really, really bring us to a climactic moment, but that's easier said than done. Like, how do we do that? Okay, let's talk about it. Okay, so we need building blocks to get to the climax. What are building blocks? Well, we always talk about the build, right? You don't want the climax to boom, come out of nowhere and hit us in the face, right? Nobody likes getting hit in the face, right? We like being eased to getting hit in the face. So think about building blocks by building your characters, okay? Each character should be a dynamic character, just like your performance should be a dynamic performance. But in order to make that performance dynamic, your characters should go through a journey. Each piece of literature that you create, or each piece of literature that you bring to life, should be a little bit different from the beginning than they were in the end. They should each be affected in some sort of way. And the climax and the build happens when they all start really, really getting affected and really, really changing character based off of whatever is going on in your argument and in your performance. Secondly, think about having two climaxes. You shouldn't yell in two moments, but you should have a performative climax, or what works well is having a performative climax and an emotional climax. Make us hold our breath and like give us a moment after where we can release our breath, right? Have the audience just build and build tension, and then let us release that tension with an emotional release from your main character or from one of your main characters. And then consider having a calm after the storm. So after you bring us to this big climactic moment, after you build and build and build, and tension is building and movement is building and your volume is building and emotions building up, and then the emotion releases. Make sure to take some time afterwards to let us sit in that, and then move on to your resolution. And then provide some sort of hope, provide some sort of solution, so that we feel like the world isn't going to end after your performance, that that we can do something about whatever your incredible message might be. And someone who I think has had one of the best climaxes was, and this is a little self-indulgent, was the 2018 NSDA national champion, Janae Siddell, from Cypress Bay. So let's take a look at her national champion climax.
In other words, being of color meant a danger. Warning. Do not touch. Reese Taylor died just shy of her 98th birthday. Now, she lived as we all have lived. Too long in a culture broken by brutally powerful men. But their time is up. At the age of 18, I know my color is not a warning, but a welcome. A girl of color is a lighthouse, an ultraviolet ray of power, potential, and promise. My color does not mean caution. It means courage. My dark does not mean danger. It means daring. My brown does not mean broken. It means bold backbone from working twice as hard to get half as far. Being a girl of color means I am key, path, and wonder all in one body. It is because of Melissa Elliott that I believed that a young black girl from Chicago could learn to dance although she felt pretty. Could be sexy and cool, could be a woman playing a man's game and be unapologetically fly. Now, if you ask me why representation is important, if you ask me why representation is important, if you ask me why representation is important, I will show you a 26-year-old woman who learned to dance until she felt pretty. So I want all of the girls here watching now to know that a new day is on the horizon. And when that new day finally dawns, it will be because of a lot of magnificent women. At the age of 18, I am experiencing how black and brown can glow. And glow I will.
So I've seen that like 1.5 million times at this point, and I'm never not a little emotional afterwards. Depending on the day, sometimes I'm having an emotional day, and then if I watch it, then I'm like crying. But like, she had an impeccable build with her performance. She gave us that powerful moment. She was Oprah at the Golden Globes, giving that incredible speech. She gave us that calm after the storm, and she made us feel like there's hope. She made us feel like we can do this together. We can bring representation to the forefront. It's always going to be a powerful performance. And I think it was because of the whole program, but also because of that climax specifically. Like, Janae was the bee's knees. So finally, it's all about your message. It's all about your message, okay, when it comes to POI. I think this is the coolest event because we get to say what we want to say, and we get to do it by showing real life, by interpreting real life, by interpreting literature, right? Stay true to what you want to say. Advocate in your performance and out of your performance for whatever your message is, for whatever your argument is, for whoever you are fighting for. And have fun while you're doing it. If your audience, if your judges believe that you care about what you're talking about, and if we see that you're having fun while you're doing it, you will always be a champion no matter what. Remember that. So thank you for indulging me, and thank you for listening to my top tips and tricks in POI. Have fun.